It's time to formally start the Steve Park Retire Career Series. This is number 5 of the 5 seasons. It was a season after his injuries, a return season from an injury. He missed the first few races of the season, but here is number 5 of Steve Park's career. 2002 was a horrible season for Steve Park. He had to miss the first 4 races because of an injury he sustained in the 2001 season. We'll talk about that later on in the series. But he only got 2 top 10s in 32 races of the season, only led 50 laps, 33rd in points, and average finish of 26.5. As you see here on this whole stat sheet, never really he only had 2 top 10s, only really a few good races. He did get switched to Steve Meal later on in the season as crew chief and actually did a little bit better with that, but only finished on the lead lap in 5 of his 32 races that season. So obviously it was just not a great season for Steve Park and wrecked more cars than I could count. But his return race was at the track he actually got injured at, the Darlington Speedway, and early on he qualified 4th, a great return qualifying run right here. Early on he's going for the lead, and he gets by Ricky Craven. So early on, Steve Park, his return race is out front here in the Carolina Dodge Dealers 400. It's looking like Steve Park still has it. He did great in 2000, he did even better in 2001 up until the injury, and right here he's out front leading, so it looks like he still has it. And then later in the race, just a few laps after this, Steve Park wrecks while in the race lead. It takes out second place Ricky Craven. So from the race lead, Steve Park gets heavy damage and ends up out of the race lead. As you'll see here, going into turn number 3, he has the lap car in front of him, and he dives down to the inside into turn number 3, and he has to slide up the racetrack, and he just does not have to run the slide up, and right here gets into the side and into the wall for the one of Steve Park, and just not the way he wanted his return race to go. It actually reminds me a little bit of a retired driver I just did, Dale Earnhardt Jr., and his return race from a concussion, very similar. He's leading the race, lap car in front of him spins out, and Jr. actually gets involved. It's eerily similar about how those two kind of aligned. Didn't really notice that until now, but Steve Park, his return race, it looked like he was going to have a good run. Running up at the front looked like it could have been a good day, possibly even a win, depending on how everything shaped out, but tough break for Steve Park. As you see the angles of him just getting collected. And right here, this one, he just was a little too impatient, wanted to get by the lap car, and possibly if he would have just ridden behind him and got by him on the front stretch, it would have been different, but he just didn't have the run to slide up and ends up wrecking himself. And then at Bristol, he just gets it's just a horrible race for Steve Park. It starts early on where he causes the first caution, spinning the car in front of him out the 44 car, and then later on in the race, he spins as he gets down onto the apron off turn number 2. As from that angle, it looks like he just kind of lost it. He just got down to the apron, but this second angle will show that he did have some help getting down there. Entering turn number 1, he dives down to the inside, and it makes some contact right there, pretty loose, and spins out onto the apron, and then he ends up being involved in a third caution as he spins coming off turn number 4, and tries to correct the car and just spins it out. The 14 also spins around. Luckily, Park doesn't get any damage, but 3 cautions he's involved in here at Bristol. And then the Aaron's 499, the big one, strikes down the backstretch. See Steve Park's yellow number 1 car take a turn to the left into Terry Labonte, and he's in the middle of the big one here at Talladega, so he's involved in the big one here. I mean, it's just not been a great season for Steve Park so far. As he's spinning around, you kind of see there in the middle of the grass right there, that yellow number 1 car, there it is, kind of just sitting there, all torn up. You'll see from the replay right there, there he is, middle of the screen, that yellow number 1 car. You see him take the left turn into Terry Labonte in the 5. There he is, sideways in the middle of the racetrack. He gets hit a few times and ends up being out of the Aaron's 499 due to this big crash here on the back stretch, as he was just kind of riding around towards the back of the field, and they wrecked him from him. He had nowhere to go. You see him sitting right there in the grass through all the dust that's being kicked up. There he is right there. And then we go to Richmond, where a crash happens in front of him. He is committed to the bottom lane and nowhere to go, so he runs right into the side of the 90 of Hut Strickland. There's Terry Labonte as well. And this replay, or these cars sitting together, actually leads Mike Joy to say this.
Pickles, cornflakes, and Pennzoil. That's not a good combination.
No, they got mayonnaise in there too, so it's...
So that was actually a little funny quote there by Mike Joy. As you see right there, Rusty Wallace spins around. Steve Park is committed to the bottom lane, has nowhere to go. The 90 came right down to Terry Labonte, and Park has nowhere to go, and he makes some pretty heavy contact with the inside wall, and it ends his day here in Richmond. So disappointing for Steve Park, as he was kind of just behind the madness. He didn't really have anything to do with it. You'll see right here from this angle as Rusty Wallace goes around. You'll see Park commit to the bottom lane, And it doesn't really look like he slows down. You see him kind of drive right through on the bomb and nail the side of the 90 car. Some pretty hard contact there. And then we go on to the Coca-Cola 600 where he spins himself in 3 and 4, gets into the outside wall with the back end, comes back down, luckily doesn't get hit, but some damage there. And then at Dover, racing with Ryan Newman, there are 2 lap cars in front of Mark Martin. Newman gets up the racetrack into the side of Steve Park. Park impacts the outside wall, and right here he's kind of sliding down the racetrack. Mark Martin has nowhere to go. He goes right into the side of Steve Park, so the race leader Mark Martin hits the lap car Steve Park as Park had spun out due to contact with Ryan Newman. So once again, just another wrecked race car for Steve Park in his 2002 season. That's going to become a theme as we go later on to the season. Daytona for the Pepsi Ford, the big one strikes. You actually see him in that one, he goes low, and then the cars start to go low, so he drives to the high side, and while doing that, lose control, and he nails right there into one of those cars, and then nails again, so he takes 2 pretty hard hits. And this big one you'll see from this angle, this replay, as the cars get together, the yellow one you'll see right there, he's in front of Ricky Craven's tie car, it goes low, and right here as the wreck happens, he then takes to the high side, he sees the cars wrecking low, he goes high, and I think that turn just kind of got him a little loose, he nails right there into the rear end of one of those cars, and he slides and he gets into another car down on the apron, so 2 hard hits for Steve Park there. Then we go to New Hampshire, where through 3 and 4, he gets a little out of the groove and spins around hard into the outside wall. So once again, another wrecked race car for Steve Park in 2002. It's just a tough break for Steve. He's not really had any luck and just wrecking a lot. But then the highlight of the season is unfortunately a low light, as I think the NBC crew does a great job displaying everyone's reactions to what happens on the backstretch at Pocono.
Oh, trouble! Steve Park is off into the infield. Another car valve over on his lid. It's Parkindale Jr. Terrible crash.
Man, Steve Park's car just turned dead left when he came off turn 2. Junior's running to see his teammate and see if he's okay.
And getting off into that wet grass wasn't going to do anything to slow those cars down. Caution is out. Ricky Rudd will lead the field back to the yellow.
There we go.
Good sign. That's what we wanted to see.
Anyways, what happens is you slide up the racetrack and you can hit somebody in their left rear as you slide up the racetrack with your right front. And that's almost what it looked like. That one car just turned dead sideways.
Well, what a great shot that is. Teammates walking away from a crash like that, arm in arm.
So you saw Dale Jr. run to Steve Park. Steve was luckily okay. But right there you saw Rusty Wallace was kind of in the middle. Steve Park tried to get to his outside, and then after hitting Rusty, comes down to the inside. Junior's nowhere to go and just bulldozes him, as Benny Parsons says, into the inside wall, and it flips Steve over once he hits that guardrail. A pretty hard flip and tumble for Steve Park. Luckily, though, he was okay. The worst part about it was actually the fact that he was kind of stuck inside the car due to all the head and neck restraint systems. But as you see right there, Rusty kind of leaves the outside open. Maybe the spotter doesn't relay that information to Rusty that the car is on the outside, and then Park takes a violent left turn into the 8. His teammate right there, Junior, couldn't really get off of Steve, ends up flipping the one over, and a hard tumble for Steve Park, as this is one of his career highlights, unfortunately, is he's been known for a lot of crashes and not a lot of wins. So he's known for a lot of his hard crashes. We'll see more of those later on in the series, unfortunately. But right there, another look at it, and you'll see Junior get into the side of him, kind of get underneath the one as the grass is wet. It's a little bouncy right there. Junior gets underneath the one of Steve Park and just bulldozes him into this guardrail, and up and over Steve goes. And fortunately, he is okay. Fortunately, Junior was okay as well. And here is Steve Park's interview after being released from the infield care center just moments after Dale Jr.'s interview as well.
It was wild, but I just want to say thank God I'm okay. I mean, he definitely rode with me, and I want to tell Mom and Dad at home that I'm fine.
And that, I'm sure it was an emotional ride for you, but what are you thinking when that happens to you? Junior said he knew it was going to be bad when he locked kind of fenders with you.
Yeah, I mean, I knew it was going to be bad. You don't realize how fast you're going here, and when you get in the grass, you're lucky not to get upside down. And, you know, with Junior pushing on the door and stuff, I mean, I knew we were going to hit the inside wall and have a chance of getting upside down, but the ride wasn't so bad as much as getting trapped in the race car. I mean, wear these protective head braces and Hans devices and stuff, and I mean, I was trapped. I mean, Pocono fortunately has really good safety workers that helped me get out of the Pennzoil car. And again, I just want to tell Mom and Dad at home that I'm okay.
I know that's got to be scary to be trapped. And Junior kind of said that's the downside of all the good safety material that we have today. But how trapped were you? I mean, could you not move at all?
I mean, I tried not to panic. I mean, you're upside down, you're disoriented. So I tried to get my bearings where I was. I knew I was upside down. And then I knew how to release the seat belts and not hit my head on the top of the car. And, I mean, trying to get your feet out and get situated enough to get out of the window of the car is tough with all those devices that are in the car. I mean, they save you as long as you're right side up. You know, when you're upside down, it's real tough to get out of the car. And, you know, I told Junior in the ambulance, I'm like, you know, thank God that car didn't go on fire. He said, man, I was right there. I wouldn't let that happen. He said, if I had to push that car over myself and pull you out, I would have. So, I mean, again, just thank the God that I'm fine. And I know Mom and Dad at home. Just want to tell them I'm fine too.
And I know Junior was a welcome sight to you. What did he say to you when he first came up to the car?
He just said, hey, you know, he was glad to see me, and he wanted to make sure I was okay. And I mean, you know, we're a tight-knit family, and it's tough. We compete against each other on Sundays, but we're all friends during the week. And you know, just to see his face, how happy he was, seeing me get out of the car, and he looked at me and said, "You okay?" And I looked him straight in the face, and said, "Yeah, I'm okay. I just don't like the fact that I was trapped." And you know, again, the safety workers definitely helped me get out of the car. And you know, if the car caught fire upside down like that, I mean, just thinking myself, you know, it'd be real hard to get out of the race car. So, you know, it's something that we're definitely going to look at.
All right, don't scare us like that again, okay? Glad to see you're okay. All right, Steve Park, just fine.
So in Steve Park fashion, after wrecking hard at Pocono, he goes on and scores a top 10 at Indy, his first top 10 of the season. And then at Michigan, he ends up crashing in 3 and 4 hard into the outside wall as the 44 spins behind him. But you'll see from a few replays here that Steve got very, very loose behind this. He was in a huge pack of cars, and right here, he's kind of behind. He gets a little loose there right in front of Ken Schrader. He impacts the outside wall a little, and then he comes down the racetrack, and then trying to keep it out of the field. He then turns back across the track, and it makes hard contact with the outside wall with the rear end of his car. So obviously disappointing for Steve Park. That's another wrecked race car in the 2002 season, as he's had a lot of those. But right there you see he gets loose into 3 and 4. The racetrack he goes, gets the outside wall a little right there, and then coming down the racetrack, trying to keep it out of the field, then shoots back up the racetrack as he turns hard to the right, and makes contact right there with the rear end of the car. Then we go back to Bristol, where he's involved in more cautions at Bristol. So he was involved in 3 earlier in the season. Right here is top 9 spins. You'll see towards the right side of the screen, Steve Park come in, gets spun right there as he comes to the middle of the screen, and then he spins once again during green flag pit cycles. So he's involved in 5 cautions during the 2002 Bristol races. Definitely not what he wanted. And then we go to Darlington, where the 4-3 John and Jerry blows up into the outside wall frame, and Steve Park is behind and has nowhere to go as he gets involved into the outside wall, some damage there. But then Richmond, he ends up, due to some strange cautions, whatever, being in the second position by his teammate Michael Waltrip as some green flag pit stops had started. Some guys got trapped for lap down. Park's in second, and down the backstretch, Michael Waltrip gets loose off the corner, ends up getting spun into the inside wall. Hard hit for Michael right there, as the caution ends up coming out, and Steve Park leads the field back to the caution flag. So Park leading his first laps since his first race back in the season, race number 5 at Darlington, as Alan Bestwick kind of updates us on the situation of the race due to the running order.
Okay, Steve Park is the leader as the field comes to the caution, and all of those guys that were on the tail end of the lead lap are going to come back around and get back in the thick of things.
So Park on the next restart accelerates well and gets away. He ends up leading about 30 laps in this race. It is one of 2 races where he led laps in the season. Obviously, the first race he led laps being his return race in the Carolina Dodge Dealers 400 at Darlington, the 5th race of the season. This is now race number 26 of the season. He ends up finishing in the 11th position, 1 spot from a top 10. I believe he fell a lap down as well. So Steve Park, decent day at Richmond, one of the better races of the season. Series 37 spins out, no caution comes out. Kansas, Kansas City's run top 15. He ends up again collected in a crash as he spins around. So some hard damage for the one of Steve Park here at Kansas. Once again, another wrecked race car in the 2002 season for Steve Park. In the one team, you'll see he gets inside steering iron, and it turns out being on the inside of a driver has always, and getting loose under them has always been around. It's not just happened with the Gen 6 car. It happens no matter what package you use. But into the outside wall for the one of Steve Park. Another wrecked race car, as I mentioned. But his best finish of the season comes in the next race out. We go to the Talladega Superspeedway, where DI has always been dominant as his teammate Dale Earnhardt Jr. crosses the start-finish line to win his third straight Talladega race. Steve Park is further back in the line in the 6th position. That is his best race, his best finish of the season. And the last few races of the season, not much to talk about in terms of Steve Park. He ends up going to Charlotte, finishing 15th, at Martinsville 16th, Atlanta 15th, Rockingham 24th, Phoenix 21st, and Homestead 17th. So really not much there the last part of the season. But that is the 2002 season for Steve Park. Obviously his worst season in his career besides any injured seasons. But so I'll be back for more. There are 4 more to count down. That's Steve Park's 2002 season. Once again, only 5 finishes on the lead lap and only 2 top 10s. So I'll see you guys for the next one.